希望大家能夠 家就大家就清楚到都走，經過都走，就上呢個鐵軌，將啲嘢擺落去，有車咁一次就擺落去，有四啲經過咧就擺落車廠嗰度，我哋咧係會清數啊，我哋係會清數都係交俾咧呢個鐵軌㗎。
嗰度有一個位啦。去咪嗰邊啊？咁行喎。你哋想點？可以去。我話而家冇咗咯喎，嗰個小德樓完咗啦，因為見到隊尾最深。
背几个人？即係隔嗰架咯，高嗰架咪警數咯。
Journey bus。
車呢個。大佬，我哋唔係。好嘛？都係牛仔褲啊！你呢個人係咁諗法嘅。你腳眼呢度？你喐嗰陣你啲風喺下面，你個人咬住你嗰啲人先唔識動。Back in 2014, I get the case. Start learning language. Then should I start from when 我想推進防先係嘛？買緊漢堡包食啊，食埋先啦。
叫咩？ 我 嚟幫手清啲物資啊！幾熱心過嚟幫手清物資啊！有手套、毛巾、實帶，係啦，毛巾都重要嘅。咁凍嘅天氣，大家帶自己巾都好啊。凍嘅，大家手腳冰冷嘅，有手套啊！你係咪有索帶啊？大家可以攞下啲毛巾、手套嗰啲嘢嘅。但係依家凍啊，大家可以當頸巾啊、保暖手套咁樣用下啦應酬，咁撚短，你俾佢啦！我掟車㗎啦！我掟啊！我仲頭啊！阿 Sir，解嚟影啊！邊個同佢哋提交？應該幸福嘅小朋友。肯定個肚都唔好掟車。你冇嘅嘢啊！好撚住。阿 Sir， 寫 T.G. 咪好咯。19點19分，黃埔車站19點15分，一帶嘅8中路、中環街市路地段，去到地條街。明咩？大船啦。喺唔破壞任何嘢。好真心啊！要小戇居喎，仲真心啊！有要幸福同埋長者嘅下層記者，得㗎啦。咁煩啊嚇！俾抄你。而家19點15分，19點13啱喺中環有排飛。呢個係用個 channel。19點15分，而家係19點15分。
知佢要打。
嘅行路咧，大家行得好慢，可唔可以行快少少啊？北打街行路嘅朋友，盡量行快少少。但行車路嗰度咧都好多人咧係行得好快嘅，希望大家再行快少少。咁而喺呢度嘅行路，即係大新銀河呢度咧，仲有好多位置俾大家離開。希望大家咧盡快經由呢度咧係經行路咧離開嘅。咁希望大家咧盡快咁咧，令到後面啲人都可以疏散到。因為北打街咧見到好多人啊，所以希望大家盡快咧係行快少少，令到後面嘅人咧都可以快啲離開到。
同埋希望大家咧上條都唔喺條上面睇啦，我哋一路向條嗰度咧，我哋手都冇人走啊！希望大家咧一路行咧係離開嘅，唔好屈住喺行人路，唔好喺對方入去，一路向海皮咧。
唔好再影響住啦，唔好再影響住啦。大家麻煩大家係啦，跟住離開嘅路線離開啦。
好，我哋沿住呢一個北打街一路向海旁嘅方向，係啦。如果你知道海旁係咩方向，幫手舉一舉話俾後面嘅觀眾知。
我希望咧大家咧明白，就係如果大家慢慢行咧，係害死好多人嘅。所以希望大家咧唔該，大家行快少少，大家行快少少。
爽啲唔該。好嚟爽啲唔該，好係啦，係啱晒啦，行快兩步嚇大家，係好。
唔該晒大家啊！
謝謝大家，一路向住海皮嘅方向，係啦，出邊有船有車可以搭。如果過海嘅朋友上車上船之前記得掉嘢，上車上船之前記得掉嘢嚇。信號口同埋碼頭有。
記住掉嘢啊！好多高雄招呼你哋㗎。
請大家唔好再好奇，唔好再翹埋雙手喺度望啦。請大家 keep 住向海旁方向行。
一路行啦，唔好停啦，大家唔需要停留，我哋咧喺終點一路向住海旁嘅方向走。
全部朋友，希望各位朋友快步行海皮，大家有步有亂，快步去海皮啦，快步行過去。 Go. Which way you wanna go?
Go back this way, mate. Go this way. Not properly. Not properly.
好，
點鐘嘅咩？
反對通知書嘅要求，冇反對通知書啦！你違反社會安全紀律嘅，點解違反社會安全？我想話遊行路線點解違反社會安全？你答我，你哋馬上回翻你哋個位置啊！好冇？我哋睇翻大家，請你同我哋合作。係啦，向後褪。呢個一個仲喺不反對通知書生效嘅和平遊行。呢個係警方俾我嘅。警方俾我哋嘅不反對通知書喺生效到夜晚10點鐘。請你哋馬上向後褪。呢個係不反對通知書，你可以睇下。我話咗唔阻你哋影嘅，係啊。你叫翻啲同事後褪先，你叫翻啲同事後褪。咁咪警察做咩先？你行過咗先啦，冇人阻嘢影㗎，你行埋喺度執。我哋冇影啊，我哋冇影喎。我哋有人不反對通知書嘅責任㗎。警方明白，我哋今次一個和平遊行，而呢個位置呢個範圍係合法，係你哋警方批准我哋一個和平嘅遊行位置嘅，好冇？好。又影呢啲嘢好行喎，好行喎呢個嘢。呢份嘢大家都有喎，應該。佢冇講理由話有混亂，咁我唔知咩混亂，咁我話啱啱大家都褪後咗，然之後乜都冇做過，佢又走過嚟話舉藍旗，咁我話真係冇人做過任何嘢，咁同埋根據不反對通知書，你係有責任去同主辦單位去溝通，呢個係警方，就算呢個即係新任嘅一哥，佢自己都講話會盡量同呢個民陣去溝通嘅，警方高層都係咁講，點解？不反對通知書嘅時間係未過，然之後警方係冇通知主辦單位之下，就各方面包圍，唔俾市民離開啊！完全冇任何嘅解釋，然之後就喺度恐嚇市民去舉藍旗，然後冇人做過任何嘢。如果有人做過任何嘢，點解要退後啊？佢直接拉人啊嘛，乜都冇做過，喺度恐嚇。然後我俾翻個不反對通知書去睇下褪後，咁即係做乜？好，唔該晒，唔該晒，呢兩個唔係記者啊，就係阻撚住晒，跟住鬼咯，黐撚線啊，都係睇嘢喎，屌你老味真係，啲鬼啊！ 喺呢個位啊。一落地㗎啦。我啱啱我不翻嚟，行翻去大埔，將佢褪後咗。佢褪後？係啊，翻後啦。咁無謂咯。係都要我拎份不翻嚟嗰啲出嚟做。係咪？嗰邊應該嗰邊嗰度。咁咪搞到啊？咁嚟緊好多。你不翻去先知道眼裝到10點鐘。係啊，呢啲人而家仲係翻嗰邊講嘅。然之後你而家仲有睇啲路嚟你走㗎。咁嗰啲人係想用能力得唔得？係嘛？咁樣小幫，你淨叫佢淨要走，我都唔使啦，由佢啦，我費事同佢喺度拗咁多嘢，因為嗰度就唔係。但係佢走咗啦，呢個就佢 set 咗條 set line 咯。 人權日遊行嘅朋友，我會即將宣佈今日嘅人數，希望警方喺我宣佈完人數之後，俾足夠嘅時間我疏散我哋遊行示威嘅人士，同埋我哋頭車去踩音響。
We will announce the number of participants now. Before our announcement, we urge and we hope the police will allow us to let our crowd to leave Pedder Street. We hope the police will give us room and time to allow us and our friends here to leave Pedder Street first.
今日遊行參與人數大約有80萬人。
We have 800,000 people joining our rally today.
我依家喺度呼籲所有參與民陣遊行嘅人士，盡快離開我哋遊行嘅路線。我依家喺度會疏散我哋遊行路線，同埋我會做訪問，同埋之後會拆音響。希望警方可以按耐，俾足夠嘅時間我哋完成我哋嘅工作。唔該晒。
We urge everyone here, every participant of the rally, to leave as soon as possible. We will have press meeting and we will settle our sound system soon. Everyone here, thank you for your participation. Please leave as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
好嘅，好，我哋見得到咧喺遮打道行人專用區嗰度咧，其實位置相對疏嘅。大家冇裝備嘅朋友，請大家自行選擇你嘅前往嘅方向。資訊提醒：喺交易廣場有防暴落地，喺交易廣場巴士站有防暴落地，為數大概40人。希望大家留意去海皮嘅時候，留意交易廣場嘅位置，有40個防暴落地。
等你哋啲機 OK 先。
另外，我哋見得到咧喺德輔道中往渣打同埋匯豐方向咧，其實位置係相對疏落。希望大家如果係需要，
今日咧民陣嗰個遊行人數去到依家呢一點啦，我哋數到嘅人數咧係大約80萬人嘅。咁我哋知道我哋灣仔仍然係有人喺度行緊，咁我哋街灣仔嘅朋友咧，警察咧會呼籲大家喺灣仔嗰度咧即係離開嘅。咁因為我哋點解咁早會去即係疏散呢一個遊行，係因為我哋感覺到有好大嘅壓力感，令到現場好多人咧都非常之緊張。尤其是你會見到即係我哋附近咧有好多警方咧，佢哋就守咗好多嘅即係防守線喺度啦。佢可能係唔想遊行示威人士越過一啲嘅馬路，但係卻係俾人有一種包圍嘅感覺，咁係令人好有一個即係壓迫感。咁基於嗰個現場嘅緊張嘅氣氛，咁我哋咧即係盡快點算好人數，咁我哋盡快公佈。咁我哋今日嘅人數係即係有80萬人左右啦。咁我哋去睇呢個人數其實由細由細仍然非常之多，但係我哋會見到咧，其實我哋今次嗰個公佈遊行咧，其實真係用翻主流媒體開記招咧，我哋星期4先至做，因為我哋同以往唔同，我哋冇信心警方會批出不打嘅通知書，以至到我哋好後先就去公佈呢一個遊行，令到呢一件事咧，其實有好多即係人咧，其實係難以接觸到呢個資訊，尤其是係唔上網嘅一群。咁呢一個可能對遊行嘅人數會有影響啦，但係我哋要提醒特區政府，80萬人呢一個人數仍然係非常之多人。林鄭月娥應該盡快聽到我哋香港人嘅訴求，佢都話即係佢尊重香港人嘅訴求，佢哋會謙卑學習。如果你哋顯示出你真係有反省，希望我哋嘅林鄭月娥係立即宣布成立獨立調查委員會，係要貨真價實嘅獨立調查委員會。我哋冇去做任何嘅預期，即係之前我哋不嬲都冇去做預期。但係其實80萬呢個人數真係喺即係香港你嚟講，其實一段好多嘅人數。即係你可能會同我一路去比較，但係今次即係我哋用咗4日嘅時間去做一個記招啊咁樣。咁我覺得我哋係即係有進步嘅空間嘅。咁呢個
想問下，即係你點睇警方用呢個方式去做一啲包圍啊、報復啊，即係咁嘅做法同以往民陣嘅遊行都有啲分別啦。你自己點睇警方成個做法？
我覺得非常
常之唔理想，尤其是你見到我哋入黑之後啦，警方突然加重咗佢哋嘅布防啦，而我哋嘅市民其實係沿同嘅路去離開緊，咁但係佢咁樣去做嘅時候，係令到我哋現場所有嘅人都好緊張，咁我哋民陣亦都咧即係要配合去即係加快人嘅腳步，咁係令到有好多人咧其實係即係好擔心會發生啲咩事。我覺得警方應該檢討下，其實我哋見到6月9號616其實都係冇任何嘅衝突喺呢一度發生過，咁我覺得無需要用到咁樣嘅布防咧去製造一個緊張嘅氣氛。我想講一個啱啱嘅情況。第一噴位啊，唔該，唔好意思啊。我希望咧，啱啱喺北打街嘅傳媒朋友，可以將片段可以播翻出嚟，俾到全香港嘅市民知道，或者國際社會見到，啱啱係冇任何人做過任何嘅嘢，但係警方突然見到有人去鬧佢哋，就即刻落車想拉人，再而去衝前，去想去拘捕其他嘅人，去恐嚇、舉藍旗，但係任何人都冇做過任何嘢。呢啲就係我哋見到過去警方嘅失控嘅場面。當我哋俾不反對通知書佢成份嘢俾佢睇嘅時候，我哋話我哋遊行未完結，市民係想離開，但係佢哋封鎖晒其他路，令到大家都係得1、2條路走，係造成咗極大嘅混亂。呢個亦都係顯而易見嘅。見到而家我哋得翻北打街去中環碼頭方嘅安全路線離開啊！呢個都係警方嘅責任嚟嘅。原因係過去警方見到喺幾條路都封殺晒，市民係好難離開，尤其是住港島嘅人。如果佢想去蘭桂坊飲酒，有咩問題啊？如果佢想去其他地方去購物，有咩問題啊？點解唔俾其他市民去遊行，然之後去做自己想做嘅嘢？相反地，冇任何違法嘅行為之下，突然間封晒所有路，再而恐嚇市民，呢個係非常之離譜嘅行為。我希望警務處處長新任嘅警務處處長係立即交代呢個事件。喺佢離開香港嘅時候，佢話過佢係會尊重我哋遊行示威集會嘅自由，亦都會同民陣主辦單位做好溝通。但係當我哋做好晒所有嘢嘅時候，前線嘅警務人員不停失控。我希望警務處處長可以立即交代。我的而且確喺今日嘅現場裏邊係見到前線嘅警務人員，尤其是係組成防線嘅防暴警察啦，係非常之唔專業。起碼即係佢突然間喺呢一個北打街同呢個皇后大道嗰度即係設立防線嘅時候，咁我擔心即係警民之間嘅衝突，我上去咧去呼籲我哋示威者咧係離翻我哋呢一個嘅即係呢一個嘅十字路口呢一邊。咁行到最前嘅時候係多名嘅防暴都係。即係我係叫我啲示威者係離開，盡快離開。但係防暴係幾個都係指住我，叫我死基佬。咁請問呢一個係咪佢哋專業執法嘅即係做法咧？即係佢應該認得我，如果唔係唔會咁樣去指罵我。你可以見到今日嘅警方咧係不停挑釁示威者，包括遊行申請人，係用一啲即係侮辱啦、恐嚇啦、極差嘅語氣，其實係挑釁即係遊行示威者。咁呢一個我覺得係極度不理想。我未嚟嗰個唔係我哋遊行嗰個路線，邊個人做邊啲嘅嘢喺遊行嘅範圍裏邊，我哋可以盡量去協調，甚至係去處理。問題係當其他嘅範圍做其他嘅嘢，有任何人做其他嘢，我哋唔知佢邊位，亦都唔知佢邊個之下，我哋好難去講話嗰啲人就係示威人士，亦都好難講話究竟佢哋做嗰啲嘢嘅原因係啲乜嘢。咁所以咧，呢個都係有待即係如果警方話想拉人嘅，或者想做啲乜嘢嘅，咁首先就係證實到究竟係咩人先咯，先可以回應到啊嘛。如果唔係好難回應。我咁講啦，即係以我所理解，我哋香港大部分人嘅共識啦，法院係我哋守護嘅地方，我哋要守護我哋嘅香港嘅司法獨立，尤其是即係之前呢一個蒙面法即係勝訴之後。即係我哋見到其實法庭係一個守護香港人權一個重要嘅機構，而係因為我哋嘅勝訴而導致到即係北方用咗好多唔同嘅機構，甚至乎係黨媒係抨擊香港司法獨立，甚至乎喺度恐嚇話香港咧解釋呢一個憲法嘅權力咧係唔喺香港嘅即係呢一個嘅法院嘅手上邊，好似有意圖咧係收回香港司法獨立嘅基本權利咁樣。咁 市民嘅不滿。法院係我哋香港人要守護嘅地方，我哋相信我哋嘅示威人士，即係會去破壞一個我哋要守護嘅地方。
咁同埋咧，即係到80萬
我會覺得其實林鄭要好好把握呢一個時機咯，即係呢一個嘅80萬嘅人數，其實點解會係呢一個數？其實有好多嘅原因嘅，但我都係提醒80萬其實已經係一個好高嘅遊行人數。咁林鄭月娥，我覺得即係你會見到坊間上面已經又再有一啲嘅底線，有啲嘅死線喺度設緊。希望林鄭月娥把握今晚嘅時間，即係盡快即係承諾會落實呢個5大訴求，尤其是宣布成立獨立調查委員會。我見唔到即係區議會選舉係導致民怨下降，我哋嘅投票係要建制派輸，但係呢個唔係我哋嘅目標，我哋嘅目標係5大訴求，即係要落實。咁而呢一個區議會嘅投票係一個公投，係根據5大訴求嘅落實同埋呢一個即係建制派所講嘅反映度，呢一個係一次嘅發聲，今次係再一次嘅發聲。希望林鄭月娥立即落實5大訴求。
Just a few words in English. So we have 8. So we estimate that 800,000 citizens joining our rally, and the political message is clear. People are resilient and people are persistent to the 5 demands. And Carrie Lam needs to take this into consideration and should set up an independent commission of inquiry as soon as possible. We are also disappointed by the police, especially the frontline police today. We see many intimidations. We see they try to set roadblocks and try to intimidate not only the participants of the rally, but also journalists in Central. And even they humiliated some of us with our backgrounds. So this is unacceptable, and we need to tell the police that they should behave and enforce the law in a professional manner rather than keeping intimidating people and keep scaring the people. If you see here at Pedder Street, people are just standing here peacefully and calm. But the police keep intimidating us and not allow many of us to live on the other side, on the other road. On the other hand, if you go to the corners west, you can see they are intimidating the journalists and try to ask them to go on the pedestrian road. But we are still on the march. We are still in the rally. So we are still in the time whether we can have our rally according to the letter of no objections. Therefore, we hope the police commissioner should respond to this situation as soon as possible and tell the people that they need to discipline the police and even to charge those police who violate the law or who intimidate the participants.
But protesters were setting up roadblocks nearby.
We can see they set the roadblocks. They are trying to, because at the very beginning, you see the riot police and water cannon are already on here. And they are protecting the people who have no gear and who has no equipment. And so you see, when we announce the numbers of participants, people here, wherever their orientations or whatever their tactics, wherever their orientations are, they are moving away. So you see people want to keep a peaceful rally today.
What about the vandalism at the High Court as well as the 12-mile appeal? What's your comment?
We recognize the rule of law and the court are the pillars to safeguard our freedoms. And we are confident that our protesters do not want to harm and to disturb the rule of law and the independence of judiciary. And you can see in the court, they are also safeguarding our freedom, like the decision on the anti-mask law ban. But people are also outraged by Beijing when they criticize the court decisions. So we understand their outrage, but we are also sure that they are not contending the judiciary, and they are also defending the law.
Can you tell us how you calculate the 800,000 number?
We have volunteers on different spots of the rally, and we have the estimations. By 15 minutes ago, and we try to estimate the number of those that we we have two teams and we have different sports, but usually this is a size that we have estimate people with one child, also we have also plus one. There are two teams.
3 teams. And also you mentioned
唔好意思，可唔可以望翻鏡頭啊？唔該。答嘅時候望翻前面啦。
journalist intimidation. You mentioned incidents of police intimidating journalists.
Yes, if you just an hour ago, if you go to the headquarters of Hang Seng Bank in Central, you see the riot police they are asking the journalists to leave, but the journalists are practicing their duties, and the journalists has no any other equipment to prevent the strong lights and the shot used by the police. And you see they are trying to intimidate them and asking them to leave, which cannot help them to perform the duties. 唔該曬 ，thank you，辛苦曬。
佢睇時間嘅。
80萬就去到。係咩？
我真係宣佈。
喂，走晒啦！
我哋真係唔夠耐，係啊，即係你好感受到嗰種力量。
但係佢已經3邊。
你有冇上去啊？我冇可以咁咪係咯，咪大佬真係講感覺唔係講感覺㗎嘛，真係好幾十萬都好多啊，係咪先？
Oh, yeah. That's why I feel like it's so good. Even though I'm not saying anything about China.
Is everyone happy that Taiwan's going to keep them up?
Especially the back.
They make them as light as we can. Brilliant. Yeah, Steve, you was able to. Can't see your excellent. Victoria, you've got one. I can't see faces, I'm afraid. I can see slogans. That's excellent.
These guys here, okay, fantastic. Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me, everybody? Yeah. Where's I'm up on the platform here. Fine, that's okay, good. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for coming. Well, we're now in the final furlong of this race, and that's when, of course, the horses can still change places. And you know, I would say we're in their 25. To use a rugby metaphor, but we're still, or is it 22 meters now? I can't remember. But anyway, we are still not quite there yet. And do not forget what happened in 2017. We remember how this is a close fourth election, isn't it, everybody? But we got to get back to rugby. We've got to drive for the line, keeping the ball firmly at the back of our feet. And we're going to get there. We're going to get there, but we're only going to get there if we work very hard. And the alternative is, I'm afraid, absolutely appalling for our country. You know what it is? And we would be so foolish as to let the government of this country fall into the hands of the most left-wing representative of the Labour Party that they produced in the last century. A guy who would be an economic catastrophe for the country, the most anti-Semitism condoning, IRA backing, Hamas supporting, Moscow appeasing Jeremy Corbyn. But it's worse than that, of course, because what he would do is he would be an economic sledgehammer. He would destroy our economy. He'd put up taxes for people across the country, and not just people on massive incomes, but across the country. People on £20,000 a year would be paying £1,000 more in income tax. He would wreck our economy. But it's worse than that, isn't it, everybody? Why is it worse than that? Because he wouldn't get Brexit done. No. We'd have another year of drift and dither and delay, and we are a party that is going to get Brexit done by January the 31st, and we've got a deal that's ready to go. It's an absolutely fantastic deal, isn't it? It's all really good. How many members of the Conservative Party standing in this election support our deal? Every single one. 600. How many members of the Labour Party, so Labour candidates, support Jeremy Corbyn's deal? None. Impossible to calculate. Nobody knows. Not even he supports it. It's the most ludicrous situation. And so not only would he wreck our economy, we would have a year more, 2 years more of drift, dither and delay. And we get our deal done. Don't forget, it's an oven-ready deal. Slam it in. Get Brexit done, yes. We get it out by Christmas. We're out of the EU, but then we get on with our fantastic agenda of uniting and levelling up our country. And we're already embarked on a fantastic. Everybody knows what we're doing. How many more police are we going to put on the streets of this country? How many hospital upgrades? No. It's 20 hospital upgrades and 40 new hospitals. How much are we spending on education? 14 billion. 14 billion more on education, lifting up education funding every school, every primary school, every secondary school in the country. A huge investment in our country, the biggest infrastructure revolution that we've seen for a century, the biggest investment, thank you Chancellor, thank you, the biggest investment in the NHS in modern memory, and we can only do it because we're a dynamic, one nation, conservative government. So that is the choice that this country faces in just how many is it? 4 days time? In just 4 days time. It's an absolutely critical choice. We can go forward with a one nation conservative government, take this country forward, or we can go backwards, drift, dither, delay, indecision, doubt, defeatism, despair, something else beginning derision, under Jeremy Corbyn and Nicola Sturgeon, with not one but 2 referendums, because that's what Nicola, she's made clear again. She's made clear her price on the Andrew Marr show today. She made it absolutely clear that her price for supporting Jeremy Corbyn would be another referendum on Scotland, plus the agony of another referendum on the EU. Is that what we want next year? Absolutely not. Do we want to take our country forward, sensible, moderate, one nation? Yes, we do. Thank you all very much. Go forward, and let's see if we can get this thing done on Thursday. Get this done and vote Conservative on Thursday. Thank you all very much for what you're doing. Thank you, everybody. Keep going. Keep the ball firmly at the back of the scrum and drive for the line. If you know what I mean. Yes. Drive for the line.
there are people in pain right now, people feeling isolated and alone even though they are not. People struggling with mental health issues or addiction issues or just struggling figuring out how they're going to make their rent and provide for their kids. There are teachers in our schools in this state where public education is under attack. There are teachers in our schools who don't know how they're going to pay their student loans and make rent, but yet still go in their pockets to pay for things for their kids when they come to school not with need. This is a tough time for America where our children are afraid to go to school because of gun violence. It's a tough time in America. But the call of our country right now has not to be to deal with these challenges with fear, but with faith in each other. So I'm running for president because I believe in us, because I believe that this is a moral moment. It's not a moment to divide and conquer, it's a time to unite and rise. Because beating Donald Trump, people make this mistake. They think we got to beat Donald Trump by being more Trumpy. And I tell people, you got to be kidding to me. I was taught, as you all were, that hate can't drive out hate, only love can do that. Darkness can't drive out darkness, only light can do that. One of the funniest moments to me in this campaign was one of my first trips here to Iowa. We had this big crowd, 500 people showing up. I'm about to go on a town hall stage, and a big guy sees me. I'm a big guy. Former tight end for Stanford, former All-American football player. The older I get, the better I was. and he puts his arm around me and goes, dude, I want you to punch Donald Trump in the face. And I look at him and I go, dude, that's a felony. We have to understand that in this nation right now, we've got to remember how we won in the past. Because every generation have had people like Donald Trump, demagogues and fearmongers and bigots rising to the highest levels, McCarthyism. Heck, we had a viable political party called the Know-Nothings that used the same anti-immigration rhetoric that this guy does, except for then that racist rhetoric was being used against Irish and Italian Americans. We beat them. We beat McCarthy. But we didn't beat these folks like Bull Connor by bringing bigger dogs and bigger fire hoses. We beat them by artists of activism that challenged people on the sidelines to get off of those sidelines. Where King was literally saying eloquent things like, look, what we have to repent for is not the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, but it's the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. Yeah. And so let me tell you, this is why this room is so important. This room is just like, reminds me of in the middle of inner city Newark, in the shadow of high-rise projects, in one of the poorest neighborhoods, we had a headquarters on a storefront just like this. When people told me you couldn't beat a political machine that had been in office for 20 years. I was the youngest person, if I had won, that would ever be elected in Newark City government. And all the people told us, you can't win, they're too powerful, they're too strong, you can't win. But we would gather together on cold days and say, we're going to win because we're going directly to the people. I tell you, this was one of those elections where, the only way seats were lost in Newark, as one reporter told me, is death or conviction, and not conviction of their principles. But we went to the people. We literally knocked on thousands of doors. We had local people from those neighborhoods knocking on doors and saying, hey, you can trust this guy. People like you going to their neighbors and their friends saying, hey, you can vouch for this. This is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm out in the cold. This is why I'm taking my time to volunteer. You are the most powerful force for change, always, because it's always been grassroots organizers. I tell you, President Obama was he was my friend before he was my president. And he's literally said that they won in Iowa against the odds. He was 20 points behind Secretary Clinton about right now. The way they won was because they had an incredible grassroots teams of volunteers signing up for shifts, doing things even though all the pollsters told them it was an impossible challenge. This is how we're going to win here in Iowa. And what I love about Iowans is they've never let elites and others decide who's going to win for them. Heck, I love the fact that some of the local media has been saying, what is this new thing about debate stages? Cory Booker should be on that debate stage. He's got one of the best campaigns in the state. Don't let elites or people with the most money decide who votes. Iowa always decides. It's a defiant understanding that here we choose candidates on their heart and on their spirit and on their heads. That's why you sent the first African American ever to the White House. And so we got to do it again. The way we made change in every great movement in this country. We got to do it again. The way we've upset the elites before. We got to do it again. Right now, but it starts with you. Let me end with this. I love how I started my career. Knocking on doors in low-income housing, public housing, seeing the truth of America that don't confuse wealth with worth. Every American, I was just with the Farmers Union who gave me their largest, the highest award they have for my legislative work on helping rural farmers. And I help rural farmers. People like this guy from Newark is the legislative champion for rural farmers. Well, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, it makes absolute sense. Because I started my career standing up for the people that are often looked down on or left out or left behind. Just like people in inner cities, farmers are our hope. They're our promise. They're how we deal with issues like climate change. Heck, if we stopped subsidizing and incentivizing oil companies and began incentivizing farmers on everything from cover crops, no-till farming, they'll solve this crisis by pulling the carbon out of the air and protecting our water. We just need to focus on the people that can make a difference. And so I just want to leave you with this understanding from my experiences, because I have never left the community that first took a chance on me. I'm the only United States senator that still lives in a community below the poverty line. That still lives in this community that people often talk down about, but we've showed them, we've done things that people thought were impossible. Our school system now is the #1 school system in America for beat-the-odds schools, sending kids in poverty on to college. We've brought supermarkets into food deserts. We've created new housing worthy of the dignity of the families that live in it. But I always say this, I got my BA from Stanford. I got it at Stanford because of a 4.0, 1,600. 4.0 yards per carry, 1,600 receiving yards. I went on a football scholarship to Stanford. My dad was not impressed. Even when I got my master's degree, he's like, okay, now boy, you got more degrees in the month of July, but you ain't hot. Life ain't about the degrees you get, it's about the service you give. And so I'm not embarrassed to tell you, I may have got my BA from Stanford, but I got my PhD on the streets of Newark from folks, everyday Americans, from everyday Americans who schooled me. So let me tell you something that one of the wisest people ever in my life taught me. Because you teach people more with your actions than with your words. So I lived across the street from projects when I first moved into Newark, and I have to say, be honest with you, I was a little intimidated when I first moved there, because even as I was moving my stuff into my apartment, I came back to my car and my stuff was stolen. First time in my life, those of us who don't live with this, I've lived with this now for 20 plus years, first time in my life I heard gunshots in my neighborhood. And when I got to the neighborhood and wanting to be a grassroots tenants' rights lawyer, I had to go meet the tenant president of the projects across the street, and I showed up thinking I was going to be some savior. I was like, da-da-da, I'm Cory Booker, ma'am, I'm here. And this woman looks at me when I say, she goes, what do you want? I go, ma'am, I'm here to help you. And she gave me this cynical look like, you're the one that needs some help. And I'll never forget, she takes me down to the street, Martin Luther King Boulevard, and I lived across the street, projects on the other side, and she's like, well, if you want to help me, tell me what you see in this neighborhood. I go, what do you mean? She goes, describe the neighborhood. And I described it just like I described it already to you. There was projects and a crack house. I just described the neighborhood. The more I talked, the angrier she looked. And finally, she's just like, you can't help me. And she starts walking away. I'm confused, so I run after her. And I go, ma'am, I don't understand. And she's like, boy, you need to understand this. The world you see outside of you is a reflection of what you have inside of you. And if you're one of these people who come up in my neighborhood and all you see is problems and darkness and despair, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're one of those stubborn people who, when you look around, you see hope, you see possibility, you see love, you see the face of God, then you can help me. And she walks away, leaving me there on the street, thinking to myself, okay, grasshopper, thus endeth the lesson. Miss Jones was one of these folks who was one of the most stubborn, defiant, loving people I've ever met. God, she was a giant, even though she was just 5 feet and a smidgen tall. She's passed away now. The street named after her now. But let me tell you something. I'm hurting like a lot of folks here. There are nights you have anxiety just because of what you saw on TV before you went to bed. There are people here that are carrying pains that I don't even know. All of us, God, we've got to be kind to each other because we're all struggling. Miss Jones was one of those people. The more I learned about her, the more I was astonished by her. I moved into those projects. I made Miss Jones a commitment. I wouldn't leave. When I became a city councilman, they won an improbable election. The biggest upset people in New Jersey had said in that state that year was me beating a machine to be the youngest person ever elected in New Jersey's biggest city. And I told her, I'm not leaving, but I'm actually going to move into these distressed housing complexes. And when I moved in that building, she didn't tell me this, but I didn't know Miss Jones's son, who came back from serving in the military, came home and was murdered in the lobby of the building I lived in. And now we're living in these buildings. I know where Miss Jones worked. She worked at the county prosecutor's office. And I know what I made as a young lawyer, had a city council person now, actually. We could have lived anywhere we wanted to. But here's a woman whose son was murdered in the buildings, but she never left those buildings. And I was confused. So I asked her, I had heard about it, and she and I, early mornings, we'd often be out there together. This was the time she would be schooling me. And I said, Miss Jones, I just need to understand something. I didn't know your son was murdered. And why do you still live here, Miss Jones? Every day walking by the site where your son was killed. And she looks at me almost like she's bothered by the question. She's like, why am I still in these buildings? I go, yes, Miss Jones. Why am I still in apartment 5A? That's what I asked Miss Jones. Why am I still the tenant president of these buildings since they were built in 1969? I'm like, I hope I have that kind of electoral longevity. But yes, Miss Jones, why? And she put her hands on her hips. And she goes, because I'm in charge of Homeland Security. She taught me the definition of hope that has best sustained me during this time of Trump and other times in the country, in my history in life, in public life. That hope is the active conviction that despair will never have the last word. Now, in this moment, I ask you to let your outrage get you out working. Let your anxiety and anger make you an activist. To make your worry get you to work. This is the time to convert all of that energy, not to hating those people who are in the White House. Never let them drag you down so low like that. But to make you again wake up that spirit in you that is the spirit of America. To join with your neighbor, to join with your friends, to join with strangers who may not look like you or pray like you, but are fellow Americans. Remember that definition of love. Patriotism is love of country, but you cannot love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. And so in the name of love, let's do the impossible again. Let's let Iowa have another comeback story. Let's show them that we are the best athletes. Let's ignite that spirit. Join me. Sign up for a shift. Sign up to volunteer. And I promise you, together, we will rise. I said this is coffee. I know there's got to be some of the Java over here. Come get a drink. We're not leaving. I know I'm going to go out to canvas in a little while. But where's my amazing girlfriend? Me and Rosario. If you want a selfie, if you want want a selfie? I want to win the election, but I also want to win the very big senatorial selfie contest going on. I'm a little ahead of Bernie right now. I need to get some ground here. But let's take some pictures, get some community. But please sign up for a shift, phone calling shift. We now have a program where you could actually text message or make phone calls from home as well. We just want you involved. If you haven't signed up to commit to Canvas, or to commit to caucus, I should say, please consider doing that for us as well. And you're right there. Is there anybody else that you can sign up with? Anybody with a clipboard? You don't have a clipboard? Please. All right, come on up because I got to talk to you. How are you? You are amazing. You have an amazing mom too. And as a guy down here, I'm really jealous of your mom's hair. It looks really cool. Can we get a picture together? Can I take your camera and do it?
Yeah. Why would you mind? Because that one is...
That's good. You guys are...
You're okay, Katie.
Can I jump in just because
yeah, she's a whole bunch of cuteness here. Addie.
She was really sad.
Let me tell you something. She is one of my best friends in Washington. She's an extraordinary woman. God for her things to do yet. Can I tell you my prediction? She's either going to be vice president, the Supreme Court justice, the order in this country in general, or she's going to win one of the president again. But I think her and my dream is one day that we see a president that's like you one day. So I hope that you will consider one day running for office as well, okay? All right? Because this country needs it. Will you do me that favor? Will you consider that? Okay, let's shake it. All right.
So let me make this clear. I am not here because of the length of time I got to serve with Joe. I've known him. We go back to 1971 and the anti-war demonstrations, and Earth Day, and all of those efforts when we did change the world. And it's not because I've known him so long that I'm here. It's because I've known him so well. I know this man. And I also know, having had the great privilege of representing our nation around the world as Secretary of State, I know that the world is in trouble. And the United States, along with it, our democracy is not working the way it ought to be. Too many disenfranchised, too many people separated from the upper end of the income level. In any country that sees 51% of all of its earnings go to 1% of its people is living with an unsustainable political equation. And we need a president like Joe Biden to change that equation. And one of the things I learned as Secretary of State is, you know, if the United States is absent, other countries don't just automatically step up to make the difference. I think Madeleine Albright called us the indispensable nation. And I want you just to think about what happened while Joe Biden and President Obama were the leadership of our nation. On issue after issue. The South China Sea, where we stood up for freedom of navigation. Country after country, where we stood up for human rights, and the rights of people to be able to be franchised and have a vote. Revolution after revolution in the Mideast. War in places we didn't ask for it. Afghanistan, where we put together a huge coalition to protect the interests of our nation. ISIS, where we put together the coalition of 68+ nations to defeat ISIS and restore a sense of rule of law and order in our world. My friends, we have our work cut out for us. That's why I've started this new effort, this environment. The climate crisis is by far, literally, the biggest challenge we face because it's existential. Science tells us that. And it is time we had a President of the United States who not only understands the science he's reading, but who believes in the science that he's reading. And that's what we need to do. number two crisis is Trump's foreign policy. But the solution to that is to elect him. The solution to climate change is going to require us to bring the world together, all of us. The climate crisis is extraordinarily big, but not really that complicated, folks. The solution is already here. It's called energy policy. You start to make the right choices, we can win this war. We can win this battle. So who can bring the public utility? The question now is, who has the experience? Who has the relationships? Who has the gravitas, the credibility, the lift to, on day one, be able to bring to the table all the automakers and get them to accelerate the rate at which we move to electric? Someone's got to be able to bring the public utilities and the governors, the construction companies of our nation, to build the greatest infrastructure program we've ever had, to begin to transition to a grid for our country that can actually be a smart grid and that begins to allow us to use the energy produced in one side of the country in the other side of the country. This isn't rocket science. Do you know what's missing today? What's missing today is leadership. What's missing today is the will to do this. And I've watched this guy create will where there wasn't any and provide leadership where there wasn't any. And that's why we need to think about the reality of what this election really means. We need a president of the United States who understands that there are millions of good paying jobs for working people, and they are there for the taking and the making if we do our job. This is not scary. The only thing that's scary is the unwillingness of a leader of the United States to recognize the reality and to call it a Chinese hoax rather than lead the nation to the table to get the job done. So, you know, we need a president who buys into the reality that the greatest market the world has ever known is the energy market. 4.5 billion users today. It's going up to 9 billion users over the course of the next 30 years. It's already a multi-trillion-dollar market. Already in America, the fastest growing job is solar power technician. Second fastest job, wind turbine technician. Far more than there are involved in the coal industry, and we all know what the consequences of coal are today. We need a president who understands that the next great infrastructure initiative of our nation is to meet the challenge of this crisis and to make it America, to make Iowa a place where you actually become a Saudi Arabia of wind power. New Hampshire, producing technologies, maybe even the negative emissions technologies, where we take carbon dioxide out of the air and put it to a use. Why don't we have a multi-billion-dollar investment effort in that, like John Kennedy asked us to put together to go to the moon? Joe Biden understands that. And I want a president of the United States there on day one who has the ability to catch up for lost time. This is the man to do that, folks. And you got to help us get there. I know how New Hampshire works. It's also clear that never has it been more important to have a president who genuinely delivers to the middle class of our country. Life is hard still for too many people. Too many people fighting to make up for the lost ground of 2008 and for the fiscal crisis, which, by the way, President Obama and Vice President Biden brought us back from the brink of that crisis. And the fact is, one of the reasons I'm here today is that I understand that Joe Biden from Scranton, Pennsylvania, grew up understanding the challenges, what it means to pay those bills, what it means to find a job. His own father had to move to do that. This is a man who comes from the middle class, who will fight the middle class, not a phony who comes down a golden-plated escalator and promises to get rid of a swamp, which he feeds with more alligators than we've ever seen before. So call it whatever you want. Experience, wisdom, muscle memory. Joe Biden's a little bit like the New England Patriots, I think. Fun to watch the promise and potential of young quarterbacks. But come February, I like having an experienced quarterback like Tom Brady pulling us. So, when Chairman Biden became Vice President Biden, he didn't just hand me a gavel, folks. He handed me a legacy of getting things done with integrity and bipartisanship, of shared experiences we had traveling literally hundreds of thousands of miles around the world, because he was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, and I served on it with a whole bunch of people ahead of me, like Paul Sarbanes and Chris Dodd and whatever. I never thought I'd be chairman of any committee. But I became chairman of that committee when he became vice president. And then I remember in 2008 when Russian tanks rolled into a neighboring country called Georgia. It was Chairman Joe Biden who immediately picked up the phone. He didn't pick up the phone to ask for a personal favor, to do anything with an election in the United States. He picked up the phone to find out what America could do to help the president of that country and that country survive. But he didn't stop with a phone call. He got on a plane right away, flew overnight, and sat on a hilltop in Georgia with that president of our Democratic ally. And he made it clear the United States stands for the forces of freedom, not the darkness of dictatorship. So just think about it. When Russian stooges in fake uniforms rolled into 8 years later, rolled into Ukraine, candidate Trump's, he also had a test. And his first instinct was to say, that's not my problem. That's not our problem. Basically, he said, Vladimir Putin can have Crimea. So ask yourselves, when they do it again somewhere, who is Donald Trump going to call? What friends does he have in the world besides Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin? And I'm pretty sure Kim Jong-un actually unfriended him just this past week. So folks, we need a president like Joe Biden who knows in his gut the difference between our adversaries and our allies, who leads on the world stage, not a president who is openly mocked and laughed at by our closest allies in the world, so personally disturbed, like a child in a playground, that he picks up his marbles and goes home, slinks away in the dark of night, and starts tweeting in solitude. We need a president who leads where those leaders of other countries respect him, like him, understand our values, share the same direction, which the United States of America sacrificed for in World War II, for the world we built after World War II, which deserves the same leadership today as we gave it then. That's what we need in the White House. We need a president who, when he stands next to Vladimir Putin a few feet away, he doesn't look at him and say something like, I don't see any reason why Russia would attack our election, and throw the entire intelligence community and network of the United States of America under the bus in one fell swoop. You don't see any reason why Russia would attack our democracy? For that statement alone, I don't see any reason why anyone would give this president 4 more years. Now, folks, so let's kind of get down to basics here. I would love to be, and I know the Vice President would, I'd love to sit here and take your questions all day long. That's how I learned the most when I was running. I love it. I can't do that today because I'm trying to make sure that I am making as clear an argument as I can as to why I care about this. Lifetime of service. I don't come to this lightly, nor does he. But I know the value of experience. Since when did it not matter? You're going to have heart surgery? You're going to go to a person? I mean, you're going to ask for the most experienced, capable person. This is big stuff right now, because so much is at stake. And I've seen this man sit in the Situation Room at the White House when tough choices were in front of us. Ebola in Africa. We were told 1 million people were going to die in 4 months. We didn't do anything. We didn't know what we didn't know. But the president and vice president had the courage to send 3,000 plus troops to West Africa to help build the capacity to deliver life-saving health care. We delivered that care. And guess what? A tiny fraction of those people died over the course of that time. These are lonely and tough decisions, folks. And I'm just asking you over these next weeks, think about the value of that experience and the choices you make in life that are based on some experience. When I became Secretary of State, Joe was an advocate and an ally for the hardest issues, from diplomacy to end the Iranian nuclear threat. I mean, Joe remembers this. We had the King of Arabia was telling me, and I'm sure he told the Vice President, you got to bomb Iran. The President of Egypt, President Mubarak, you must bomb Iran. The Prime Minister of Israel came over to the country and said, I want permission to bomb Iran. I want the green light from you guys. Will you back me up? And President Obama had the intelligence and fortitude to say, whoa, we got to do diplomacy before we take young Americans and send them to war. That's part of the test. And I know that Donald Trump has let that genie back out of the bottle now. You have everything that's happening in the Middle East today is foreseeable, and it was foreseen. This is dangerous stuff, folks. So I think measure ISIS. When ISIS happened, they were sweeping across Syria, about to take Baghdad. Mount Sinjar had the Yazidis who were about to be wiped out in an act of genocide. And we decided, President Obama decided, to send bombers. But we didn't just send American bombers. We built a coalition. We got the Arab countries together. And for the first time in history, Sunni Arab countries bombed Sunni Arabs because they understood what was at stake. That's leadership. This guy's threatened, walks away, promises, rattles the saber, has sweetheart meetings with the man he says he loves, who happens to be the worst tyrant on the face of the planet. I want a man there with basic decency and strength who understands the difference between who's a friend and who isn't. And that's Joe Biden. I ask you just to think about the difference between two people. The difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is a difference that is not Donald Trump, by the way. Please. He's an interrupter. He is. He's a disruptor. That's what he does. But this is serious. Think about lifestyle. Think about life choices. Think about the history of life now. Think about a man who lost his wife, child, 2 kids survived, and an auto accident days after he was elected to the United States Senate, before he's even old enough to be sworn in. And he gets through that thinking, gee, I shouldn't go to the Senate. I can take care of my kids. Think about that. So this is a man who's been tested publicly. And so have his skills as a leader. As a senator, he stood up to war criminals in the Balkans. He passed arms control agreements. He wrote one of Congress's first ever climate bills in 1986, before a lot of people had heard about the word. Again and again, I saw Joe fight fights that needed fighting and win them. So I just say to you very simply, folks, I think we need a President of the United States who fought and passed the landmark Violence Against Women Act. I think we need a President of the United States who stood up and beat the NRA in order to win an assault weapons ban. I think we need a president who can do what I saw him do, something that eluded every president since Harry Truman, and pass the biggest health care reform program in history that today we proudly call Obamacare. president who will build on Obamacare and make sure that every single American can choose a public option. And remember that Joe Biden was trusted by President Obama on almost every tough issue. He was put in charge of the Recovery Act. He had presidential power as vice president to make that happen. And that act literally saved us and brought us back from another Great Depression. He was designated to humanely face down the problem of unaccompanied children pouring in from Central America. Remember that? Well, we need a president who actually knows how to protect the borders without trampling on the rights of our fellow human beings. You know, you can find an issue where you don't agree with it. You can find an issue with any of the candidates where you don't agree with one or the other. But unless it's the difference between life and death, folks, what we need to make certain is that we actually remove Donald Trump from the White House. What we need to do when I hear some people draw these little minor distinctions between some of the candidates, I must say to you, I'm tempted to be a little bit like Rhett Butler, Gone with the Wind, and say, frankly, I don't give a damn. The difference is really whether or not we're going to have a president who's decent, who's experienced, knows how to lead the nation, who has relationships all around the world, who on day one can begin to heal a world that is broken because of what Donald Trump has done to trample on it and pull it apart. So all over the world, people are wondering who we are today. 16 years ago, you voted for me, and I thank you profoundly for that. And together, in November of that year, we turned New Hampshire blue again. We carried Michigan, carried Wisconsin, carried Pennsylvania, came within one state, several thousands of votes, of beating a wartime incumbent president of the United States. I'm proud of what we did together. But you knew the stakes then. They're even higher now in 2020. So I would never come here to tell anybody in New Hampshire how to vote. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to tell you why I'm working for and why I'm voting for Joe Biden. And after 4 years of Donald Trump, the world is still wondering what happened in America. And if he gets 8 years, folks, they will be wondering who we really are. So New Hampshire, when you vote in February, don't just send a message. Send us a president. Send us a president who will fight for the middle class. Send us a president who will put our nation back together. Send us a president who is from the middle class. Send us a president who can make America, America again. Send us a president, Joe Biden.
All national. I know who I'm voting for. Excuse my back. Excuse my back. It's good to be back. Good to be back in Nashville. Let me start off by thanking Annie for being my friend for so long and all the hard work she does in Congress and being willing to stand by me again. And folks, you know, John has been a friend, as he said, a long time. But we've also worked together on some really, really difficult issues. And I admire, and you all do too, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because you know him well. I admire John's physical courage. What I admire as much about his physical courage is his moral courage. He had the courage to go back to Vietnam and begin the end of a war that should have never been started in the first place, in my rationale. Not only I've never found anybody with more just pure and right neighborhood, I come with more guts than John. But you know, especially John Kennedy said, you know, moral courage is a rarer commodity than physical courage in public life. John's demonstrated both. Folks, there's a lot of things that John has covered, and he's given me credit, some of which I don't deserve, because John was the guy leading the fight on some of these foreign policy issues. But John and I have been simpatico intellectually and politically for a long, long time. And you chose really well when John ran. And like John, I'm not here to tell you that I deserve your vote. I'm telling you, I want you to look me over. Where I come from, there's an old expression. I used to knock on doors when I'd run. I said, my name is Joe Biden, Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. Look me over. If you like what you see, help me out. If not, vote for the other person. But give me a look. And that's all I'm asking you to do. Because you do have, you are really the starting gun for the primary race for the United States presidency. You have an incredible obligation, not to me at all, to yourselves. Because what you do here in Iowa, actually what they do in Iowa, what you do here in a primary in New Hampshire, is going to set the tone for who is likely to be the nominee for President of the United States. And you always take it seriously. You really do. You always take it seriously. But I don't think it's ever been a more serious choice you have to make today. Not because I'm running, not because I'm running, but because of the man who holds the office of President of the United States now. I don't think any of you, at least I didn't. I knew he didn't know much when right after he got elected, and before that, but right after he got elected, he said, remember he said, you know, I didn't realize this job would be harder than running a real estate empire. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Whoa. But he meant it. He meant it. So folks, there's so much at stake. So much at stake. And you have a lot of good candidates to choose from. Who's going to take you on. And you're going to have to make some tough choices. But what I want to do, rather than talk to you about the specific issues of everything from healthcare to global warming, which is the existential threat to humanity right now, that John's leading. John put together a coalition of over 70 world leaders, both political parties, all around the world, to deal with this climate crisis. And John and I agree, and John's been a leader on this back in the days when it was before the UN. The reason why we have a Paris Climate Accord, so I played a little part in it, was this guy put almost 200 nations together to say we can't deal with this guy right here. I spent an awful long time in my career in the Middle East, and in Iran, and dealing with Iranians. John was the guy that, in fact, was able to. The President and I did a lot, but John was the guy on the ground, putting together the single most invasive regime of inspection that's ever been put together in all human history. We knew exactly what every single solitary thing the Iranians were doing relative to trying to get a nuclear weapon. And it slowed it up. John was able to put together a coalition of our allies in Europe, along with Russia and China, to be able to put a stop to what they were doing. And it worked. And along came the guy in the art of the deal. The art of the deal. My Lord. Look what he did. America first now makes us America alone. America alone. And folks, last thing I want to say, because I want to go to questions. You know, I said early on, I come out of the civil rights movement. That's how I got involved in politics. Because my state is the 8th largest black population of any state in the nation. And that's what excited my passion and anger when I was a kid. And that's why I got so deeply involved in my community with the civil rights movement. But you know what? I never thought I'd ever see the day after we got through so much and elected an African-American president that I was proud to serve with, that we'd see a group of people come out of the fields carrying torches in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017, accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan, chanting anti-Semitic bile, the same exact bile was chanted in Germany in the 30s, carrying Nazi flags and torches. I want you to, I really mean it, think about it when you get home. Close your eyes. Remember what you saw on television. The hatred they were spewing in one of the great cities of America. And a young woman was killed in in a melee. The president was asked to speak to it. And he said, quote, "There are very fine people on both sides. No president in American history has ever said anything like that. This guy's more George Wallace than he is George Washington. This guy has fomented hate. He has given oxygen to white supremacy and divided the nation like every single scam artist out there has done when they're trying to get power. To divide us, to divide the people. The reason I've worked so hard and spent so much time talking about the middle class, it is the moral center of who we are. When they conclude that this is a rigged game, they can't benefit by playing by the rules. That's when charlatans are able to begin to take advantage. So folks, the words presidents use, any president, matter. People listen at home and around the world. The word matters. A president, by his or her words, can send a nation to war, brave women and men. It can bring peace. It can make markets rise or fall. It can also appeal to the deepest, darkest elements of American society and give them oxygen, which has happened here. So I know I initially was criticized for saying we're in a battle for the soul of America. We are in the battle for the soul of America. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, endowed by their Creator, the life, liberty, and you know it all. We learn in school. We think it's almost corny sometimes when we talk about it, but it's real. We've never lived up to it. But no leader has ever walked away from it like we have now. Every generation has opened the aperture of opportunity more and more and more and more. This guy shut it down. So folks, we have to, not only for our sake here at home, but internationally, restore the soul of America. When he said those things, remember? Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, wondered out loud, what's happening to America? Other leaders throughout the world said, what's going on? We've always led not just by the example of our power, we're the most powerful nation in the history of the world. Folks, we've led by the power of our example. That's what's united. And it's in jeopardy. So folks, we've got a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. And it's not just going to be the president. It's going to have to do that work. It's going to be all of you. Whomever the next Democratic president is, God willing. And the reason why it's got to be all of you, because we have to change the rhetoric. We have to change the way we treat one another. We have to get back to some degree of civility. The next president is going to have to, not only on day one, you're going to inherit a divided nation. And the next president is also going to inherit a world in disarray. And they better be ready on day one. They better be ready on day one. And the reason I'm running is because of my experience. Not in spite of it, because of my experience. With the help of an awful lot of people, I've been able to get more major legislation passed than everybody else running in the entire Democratic field. They're good people. But I've been able to get things done. I don't treat all Republicans as my enemy. This is not your father's Republican Party. Any Republican Party that votes to say that this guy's better than Abraham Lincoln, my God almighty. I pray for the return of the Republican Party. And the next president's going to have to be able to stand on the world stage on day one, when he or she speaks. No, for Vladimir Putin, no, he knows who he is and he knows who that person is. Knows that our allies speak when he or she says something, that they're going to keep America's word. It's important. It's important. So folks, Why don't I stop? I'm anxious and more anxious on your mind. You have an opportunity. I have an opportunity to hear what you're thinking, because this election is about you. It's not about me. It really is. It's not about me. It's about you. It's about my kids, my grandkids. It's about this country that is the most incredible, we're the most unique nation in the history of the world. Because we're built on an idea. An idea. Unlike any other country. And it has to be restored. So as my mother, Catherine Eugenia Finnegan Biden from Japan, would say, why not hush up and take any questions y'all have? Fire away. Raise your hand. Gentlemen, right there. What I'd say is I would turn and I'd say, look, everybody knows who Donald Trump is. Let me tell you why. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. Because what I'm not going to do is I'm going to try my best to keep my Irish in check. You know, anyway, yeah. No. But, you know, but really and truly, look, everybody knows who Donald Trump is. I gotta let them know who I am, who we are. We choose hope over fear. We choose science over fiction. We choose, for real, unity over division. And most importantly, we choose truth over lies. Lies. So, folks, I've just got to make sure that I let people know who I am. What is my position in the Electoral College? My position in the Electoral College is it's not going to change. We need a constitutional amendment to be able to change it. And there is some early rationale for it. The early rationale for it, the reason we got the Connecticut Compromise, was because states like New Hampshire, Delaware, and others who have very small populations would have no impact on the outcome of an election if, in fact, no one would show up, quite frankly. And so I still think there's value to it, but I do think it's worth us going back and considering it. I've taught constitutional law for over 21 years, and I think it's worthy to be considered, re-looked at again in a serious way by scholars to see whether or not there should be any change or any alteration of it. But the fact of the matter is, it is what it is. And for example, if it wasn't in a position where there was a electoral college, you all wouldn't get a chance to do anything in this process. No, I mean, you get the vote, but you know, it wouldn't. And I think it requires. The whole purpose was, if you remember, is not only to get a constitution passed, but it was to bring disparate parts of the country together, so that you have very different concerns, all solid concerns, but different concerns that people have in Mississippi. Practical concerns are different. I'm not just talking about race. I'm talking about differences. The folks in North Dakota have different problems than folks in let's say, Virginia. And so there's a reason we have to bring each other together in a federal system. And so I'm going to start sounding like a common law professor instead of a candidate. But I think, look, it is what it is. We're going to deal with it, and we're going to beat it both ways, the popular vote and the electoral vote. I'm sorry, can you holler your question? I don't think they planned on my taking all these questions. That's okay. Oh, he's getting out his cell phone. I hope you're not calling the president. No, there you go. You got it.
Thank you. Vice President Joe Biden and Secretary of State John Kerry, thank you for your service to our country. It's much appreciated. As you know, Donald Trump is the most reckless president in the history of the United States by his vulgar message and language. I strive to be a politician, but might not make it old enough due to the abuses of power from this president and the threat of climate change. Mr. Vice President, what would you do to deal with the Muslim camps in China? How would you reassure the Kurdish forces and our allies of our support? And would you ever endorse a Green New Deal?
I have a Green New Deal. Look, the idea, we did the first Green New Deal. I love this, the Green New Deal. There are 4 or 5 different versions of how to deal with the climate change. And all of the environmental groups have rated my group B+ to A+. There's nobody who suggested that it's not a great Green New Deal. And it goes to what John said, who can get it done? For example, the first thing I'll do as president, beyond talking to about how to do it, not a joke, is to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. Second, to invite all those nations back to the United States, just like the President and I and John did with the nuclear proliferation agreement, to bring them to the United States of America and say, here's the deal, you made a commitment, and we're going to have to live up to the commitment. You're going to have to live up to it. And because we make up 15% of the problem, the rest of the world makes up 85% of the problem. With regard to what he's talking about, and I'm sure you all know, but he's talking about what would I do about the Uyghurs in China. Well, there's 1 million Muslims who are being essentially in concentration camps in the West. I would and I have been speaking out on that from the beginning. Look, if we do not speak out about human rights, nobody else will, and it's a flashing green light. Go, go, go. Look how far out of hand what's happened in Hong Kong has gotten. Do you think Barack and I would have waited 10 seconds to talk about that? It started before and we spoke up. We reminded the rest of the world that they made an agreement when they brought Hong Kong in. And the context of it was the following. And we got the rest of the world to say, stand up in the United Nations and say, you're wrong, you cannot act that way. And so you've got to speak up. It's not about sending hundreds of thousands of troops to fight anywhere. It's about mobilizing the world to say, you will pay a price that at least relates to your reputational cost, as well as possibly trade in other areas if you continue to act in a way that is intolerable. And so we've got to speak out, folks. We underestimate the incredible power, the moral power of the United States when it speaks out. It has a profound impact. For example, look at my photography. You're awful good, man. What's your name? Man, good to see you, pal. Maybe we can talk afterwards, okay? All right. Anyway. Wow. Anyway, kind of a little bit of distraction. Look, folks, we have been, remain sort of the moral center of gravity for the world. And when in fact, and it has impacts. Like, look what's, I'm going to answer your question. Just take a look at what's going on now in Venezuela. And we're silent. You know what that means? We don't speak up. You may see Colombia in real trouble, not able to handle the millions of people crossing the border, or Bolivia. You may see what's happening in Brazil. You may see things that fundamentally affect our physical security. And we don't say a word. He has no notion of what to do. Much more to say, but I've already tried to answer your question too thoroughly.
I guess I was just the closest person. So, my lovely wife next to me is a refugee from the Soviet Union who came here thanks to some votes that you helped cast.
Thank you for choosing us.
Last month in November, the United States only resettled 1,400 refugees, and in October it was 0 for the first time since they started keeping records. So my question to both you and maybe to Secretary Kerry as well would be, what would your policy be for refugee resettlement, and what is an ideal number of refugees to resettle in the United States?
The ideal number of refugees resettled in the United States is that we can handle and we can tolerate a significant increase in refugees who are seeking and going from oppression. I'm the guy that started the effort a long, long time ago to deal with the resettlement of Russian Jews in the United States of America. I didn't know how I would make the judgment. But seriously, think about it. I was raised by what the Jewish community calls a righteous Christian. My dad was happened to be a Catholic. My dad would come home for dinner and then go back. Dinner was the one time we were all together every single night. He'd work until 5, he'd come home for dinner, and then he'd go back to work. And my dad, our dinner table, were two things required. One, you had to have perfect manners. My dad was insistent upon, you could never, even though in the middle of summer you couldn't come with a t-shirt and a baseball hat on and sit down at dinner, you never put your elbow on the table, you had to know which fork to use when. You know, my dad was fastidious about it. But the other thing my dad was fastidious about, our dinner table was a place where you had conversation and incidentally ate. Incidentally ate. And oh, you think I'm joking? I'm not. My dad used to talk about, he was a student of the Holocaust, and my dad used to talk about things, why didn't we, for example, bomb the railroad tracks to Auschwitz? Why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? Why did we let that shit go by? And the point is that what we do in the United States of America has a profound impact on. Look how it changed the Soviet Union, our attitude. We insisted on it. We said, you're going to act this way, we're going to not do the following. And it wasn't about going to war. We didn't threaten war with Russia over Soviet Jewry. We pointed out to the whole world exactly who they were and what they were doing. Which leads me to this last point on this issue. There's a lot, we could talk a lot about it. But one thing, look, there was a poll, a worldwide Gallup poll, in February of this past year. You know what it said? It said that the Chinese leadership was more respected than American leadership around the world. And we're right just a click above Russia. We yield our moral leadership. Again, think about it. Think about the power of the moral leadership has when we speak up. Look what we were able to do in Africa. Look what we were able to do to begin to change the, well, he's a good friend, by the way. He's a good friend. And look what one has done. It has changed the lives of millions of people. Why does that matter? It matters in terms of generating leadership in countries that are only now beginning to emerge, that look to the United States not as the problem or the enemy, look to the United States as a solution. And so, folks, it matters what we say, it matters what we do, and I think the idea that we are unwilling, that we said, Barack and I thought, and John thought we should increase the number of refugees who should be able to come to the United States, and at least at a minimum what they call temporary status, when they're like we should be doing in Venezuela now. What happens? We have enough problems in Central America, okay? And I'm the guy that wrote the legislation as vice president to provide $750 million to get those countries where all the movement from Central America is coming, to move them in a direction where they had to repair the corruption in their countries to get aid, had to set up school systems. We didn't give any money directly to the governments. We give money directly to the mayors that do street lighting in tough cities, etc. Generate electric, just being able to turn on electricity, click a switch, because they don't have it, etc. And what happened? The flow began to diminish significantly. It's not like everybody sits around the world and says, you know, I got a great idea. Let's leave everybody we know, everything we think, the language we speak. Let's get up and go to the United States where we're not sure we want them. We don't speak the language. Won't that be fun? Seriously. People leave what they love because they can no longer live there because of what's happening to them. It doesn't mean we are the repository of every lost soul in the world. But it does mean we have a responsibility to have a moral leadership to get the rest of the world united and deal. Look what happened when we didn't, when we were unable to deal with what happened in Europe, in the massive flows from Afghanistan and Iraq and from Libya. We have Brexit now. We have a broken system in Europe that this president thinks should be broken anyway. Anyway, yes, ma'am. Okay.
What was your chance on any committing on the appeal of the Helmsford Amendment, the Helms Amendment?
Which Helms Amendment? Related to what issue? There are 4 major amendments he has.
Of the abortion amendment?
No. The Hyde Amendment.
Hyde
Amendment. The Hyde Amendment, look, when you move in a direction that all of health care is available to be able to go through a federal system. The Hyde Amendment, which every single member running for office in the Democratic Party has voted for, every single one. The Hyde Amendment was designed to say that when there was an alternative that was available to everybody, poor women, it was available, when you weren't cutting off everything from Planned Parenthood, which I get 100% voting record from, et cetera, then in fact it made sense to say, okay, in fact, that would be available. Once you go out and say either Medicare for all, or you go out and you propose what I do, that you increase Obamacare and provide a public option, then what you're saying is that Roe v. Wade is not available to poor people under any circumstance because it's a federal money. And so I came out a while ago saying we have to get rid of the Hyde Amendment because it's no longer doable and usable and no longer a serious option for anybody. All these states going out and not only challenging whether or not they're saying that it's a criminal offense, that you're going back to the best way to say it. If I get elected President of the United States, the Supreme Court overrules Roe v. Wade, I'm going to send legislation to the United States Congress to pass it and codify it. Folks, look, I know I'm keeping it. Where I come from in Delaware, if you keep people standing more than 15 minutes, you lose them all. You're probably all gone by now. But let me conclude. Folks, like I said, John and I got started very young. We ran for office when we were in our 20s. I got elected to the United States Senate before I was old enough to be sworn in. I'm the first senator I ever knew, and in fact. And so here's the deal. I was always labeled as the idealistic, young guy who was optimistic. I can say without fear of condemnation, I am more optimistic today about America's chances of leading the world than I've ever been in my career. And I mean, think about it. We're all walking around with our heads down like, woe is me, what are we going to do? My God, we're in real trouble. We are because of the administration, not because of the American people. Think about it this way. We have more great research universities in the United States of America than all the rest of the world combined. And it's owned by the people. Every single solitary life-altering change that's occurred has come out of a research university. It not come out of the private sector. It's owned by you. It's been monetized by the private sector. Good thing. But it's being owned by the American people. Whether it's Los Alamos or any other great research university. And folks, secondly, we're in a situation where our workers, I'm not going to be taking more questions, our workers are 3 times, I'm going to take your question because you're not going to put it down in a minute. You're Irish too, that means she's not going to quit. But let me finish my thought here and then I'll take this one last question. Folks, thirdly, we're in a situation where the American people, John and I have met virtually every major world leader. I haven't found a single one, and I mean this sincerely, think about this, who wouldn't trade places in a heartbeat with the United States of America as president. In a heartbeat. We're the largest economy in the history of the world. We're the most advanced research people in the history of the world. We're the most diverse population in a democracy that generates enormous ingenuity. We're in a position where we have significant venture capitalism, know how to get things done. We have the most powerful military in the history of the world. And folks, what are we doing? We're forgetting who we are. This is the United States of America. There's never been a single solitary thing in our history that we haven't set our mind to do, we've been unable to accomplish. Literally, not a single solitary thing. So my message is real clear. Let's get the hell up and take back this country. Let's move. Let's take it back and lead the world once again. Thank you. Folks, I'll answer your question. I'll come over and answer it. Ladies and gentlemen, every time I walk out of my grandfather Finnegan's house up in Scranton, he'd yell, Joey, keep the faith. And my grandmother, no, Joey, straight. Joey,
straight and fake. We came